All right, we are recording. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our International Coaches Connect webinar series. I'm your host, Jason Stankus here. We've been doing these for a little while now, and it's kind of just if you're first time, it's grown out of the International Coaches Academy that Athletes in Action hosts. Usually each November, we host about 25 coaches from around the world and do a 10-day leadership coaching training experience. We're doing it again this November, but we've really built out a digital kind of way to keep in touch with our core community, as well as just allowing access to the world's coaches to really learn total coach principles. From Athletes in Action, we believe in building total athletes, and to do that takes total coaches, and that's incorporating the physical, mental, and spiritual. And Athletes in Action, if you're a first time, we are a Christian faith-based organization. So we look at how do we perform sport at a high level while also integrating what we believe are principles to really help human flourishing. And we think the Christian message and integrating that into sport is really an ultimate way to really live the fullness of the potential of an athlete. Professor Hal Wilson has been a friend of Athletes in Action for many years. He came and spoke at this year's International Coaches Academy, but he has been around the coaching circuit. He is a professor at Georgia Southern and really runs a lot of their he's involved with a lot of their coach. Here's a professor of coaching education at Georgia Southern University. He's worked with USA Basketball, and actually I have this right here. Uh, you might coach was involved with I think in the early days of some of the training that USA Basketball has done, but he's been involved in helping USA Basketball and but also uniquely for this call has an academic side of coaching that we get to dive into. So, Professor Wilson, anything you would want to any just what's a fun story we should just know about you as we get started?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and what you do. And I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day or night to be here. I don't think I have all the answers, but I'm looking forward to learning from people. And whatever we talk about today, apply it to your context and your unique situation. Because I've been lucky to talk to coaches around the world, whether it be a Norwegian ski jump coach or a judo coach from Jordan or a soccer coach from Brazil and basketball coaches from all over the world. And I just really enjoyed speaking with coaches because there are some principles I think that cross cultures, and I'll be really interested in hearing your opinion. So that's how I coached for 29 years, from every level, from youth to the highest level of college in the United States. And I have seen a lot of different situations, but again, I don't know the specifics of yours, but I do think there's things that carry over. So I'm excited to be here and hopefully share some of the things I've picked up along the way.
We do have one of your former players is on the call today, so we'll she's going to keep you in line here.
That's right. She's going to
So
call me
welcome.
out if I say anything that's not true. So yeah, Sarah Evans is on the call, works for AIA now. She was a fantastic player on a really good two-time state champion team, and I'm very proud of her and what she's doing now.
All right, so we're going to dive in. So today's topic, my printout here, we went coaching myths versus reality. And there's a lot of just things we hold on to that we just, your culture says this is what it means to be a coach and to be a good coach. That might not always be true. Some of them might. We're going to find out. We're going to look at the academic side today. All right, the biggest one. So we put out some things to all our coaches, get your input and to help build out this webinar here. But the number one thing that always seems to come up, regardless of the sport, the culture, is tough love and pressure brings out the best in athletes. So this tough love quote, we're gonna push them and pressure. Um, so Hal, what do you think about that one? What's your thoughts?
Right. And again, this is really highly context specific. Your culture has an expectation of how leaders and coaches should behave. And in America, traditionally the coach, the authority figure, it was my way or the highway. You do exactly what I say and don't ask any questions. And most athletes didn't ask questions, but that has changed significantly. And so you can be difficult. And here's where I get a lot of pushback and coaches, they think, well, if I'm not being super hard on the players, then I'm not coaching them. And that's not necessarily true. You can be, the phrase is, I can be demanding without being demeaning, and I can still coach them hard. I can still get onto them, but I have to establish a relationship first. I really have to get to know them as a person because just like all of us respond differently to our bosses, the athletes respond differently. And so I would ask my athletes, before the season. When I took a new job, I'd sit down with them face to face and I would have them tell me what gets the best out of you. And some players would be self-aware enough to say, Coach, you've got to push me. And others, I had a young man one time when I was coaching high school say, Coach, if I make a mistake, you really don't need to tell me because I probably already know. And he was real cerebral. And at first, the young coach in me would have said, Hey, come on, I'm the coach, that's my job. Right. But I understand how to handle him differently. So you can push them. You should push them. You should have clear standards and hold them accountable, but you don't have to be a dictator. And I've worked with, former Olympians from around the world, and I'm not going to name the country, but in this country was a very patriarchal society where the males were in charge. And this Olympian, this was an Olympic level athlete, a medalist, said if they made a mistake in practice, it was acceptable at that time, this has been 20 years ago, right, for the coach to actually have a stick and hit the player, right? Not to injury, but to make a point. So we don't recommend that, right? But that's where you got to look at your culture. And even if your culture says this is the way to do it, is it really? Is there a way to build a culture that is demanding without being demeaning and not putting the athletes at risk?
All right. Thanks, Hal. Hey, before we jump into the next myth, we want to open it up if there's any questions on that. You can put them in the chat box. You can even, we'll give you a moment if you even want to unmute and ask on that. Coach, I think you said a great thing about the context of every culture is a little bit different. So you do have this cultural reality. And if you think of any questions to put in, I have one story I want to share about Coach Summit. You spent some time here in University of Tennessee back in your younger days. But Coach Summit was a beloved coach. I mean, she's one of the lead pioneer coaches in women's athletics. Sadly, she passed away now about 8 years ago. But there was a story. They had the funeral service. We watched some of that, and all these players would get up and they would talk about like how much the Coach Summit really pushed them to their limits. But as you hear the stories, you can find out that she was able to do that because each of those players knew she loved them and was for them. Like she was so for her players. It seemed like that enabled them. The relationship was there because they knew she believed in them, was for them, that she could push them harder than anybody. You got that impression just as people were sharing about their experiences with her. Well, any Pat Summit, you got a Pat Summit story maybe to throw in just while talking Tennessee basketball?
Sure. Yeah. For those that don't know, Coach Summit, she won 8 national titles, 1,098 games, probably one of the greatest coaches of any sport, any time. And I was fortunate. I coached on the men's side for 3 years, and I tried to get to as many lady ball practices as I could. And first of all, I was just the lowest person in the hierarchy, and she treated me like I was a national champion, and she treated everybody that way. And she was very, very tough on her players, but they knew that she loved them and she cared for them. And that's the thing is, and it's like even in teaching right now, I run our undergraduate minor in coaching and our master's. So our undergraduate minor is primarily face to face. I had a student one time, I'd had him for 3 years in courses. And that third year, he got to his senior year and he kind of slacked off. Sometimes seniors do. Uh, And I was able to call him in my office and I got on him really hard because we had a relationship that had been established and he knew I cared about him. I would not have done that to a first year student because there was no relationship. So you can get onto them. Somebody put it in the chat about it. Can you yell at them? Absolutely. Absolutely. But you've got to love them more than you yell at them. And you have to establish that up front. And that's something you can talk about. So you have a conversation about, listen to what I'm saying, maybe not the way I'm saying it, or if I get on you, that's a good thing. If I get on to you, that means I think you can do more, right? If you're making a mistake and I never say anything to you, that's probably a bad thing. That probably thinks I don't think you can do it. So the fact that I'm coaching you means I believe in you. And I think you have to explain that. You have to talk about that up front, and you have to talk about that continually. If you have a situation, because some players don't mind getting yelled at, some players thrive on it. Some players don't mind it one on one, but don't want it in front of their teammates. So you have to find out for that individual what works for them. And maybe it's a situation where I did get on them in front of their teammates, and maybe they are a little embarrassed or something. And now I know, so now I'm going to put my arm around them or talk to them in a side or something, explain to them a little personal attention, why we did that, what was going on. And you always want to leave them with a positive. There was just an example in the American women's basketball tournament where the Maryland head coach it's gotten a lot of attention where she was really getting on to a player, but also being very encouraging and saying, I believe in you. And so I think that's very, very crucial to understand. It's one thing to say, say you missed a box out, and so we gave up an offensive rebound. And I say to you, player, you missed that box out, dadgummit, you did it again. We just worked on that in practice. And now so I'm criticizing, am I criticizing the act or the person? And players will take it as you're criticizing me as a person. Versus if I said, say we're in a timeout and we've missed a box out and we're sitting down, no, I look to you face to face and I say, player, Bob, whatever, Jane, if you would box out like you did yesterday in practice, you would be the best rebounder in the league. You would dominate. And so I'm taking the same concept and I'm phrasing it into a positive. I'm still holding them accountable. And then sometimes you'll have players, and again, every player is different. I know for me as a player, especially coming up, I didn't have a ton of confidence. And I remember coaches speaking confidence into me. A high school coach said, I'd made a mistake. And he said, well, this is going to be a funny story when you're all conference, you're all league. And I had never even thought about that. So he even put an idea in me that I had never had. So you can take those moments, hold them accountable, yes, but you can do it out of love and that I believe in you. It is so crucial. And you can't just say it one time. You can't just make, oh, what we covered it in our preseason meeting. No, you have to continually. I heard a concept one time. When you build a culture, it's like a bucket of water, right? And that bucket has a leak in it. That culture does not stay. It is always leaking because they're hearing things from their friends, their parents, maybe they have other coaches, maybe they have social media, and it is always trying to put more holes in that bucket. And you cannot plug all the holes yourself. That bucket leaks. Now you have to continue to try, but you have to get the players on board now where they are plugging the leaks, and it is now a player-led team. And that's when you really see something. Because now, let's say I get on you. Let's say, Jason, I got on you, but now Sarah saw that, and now she knows I care about you, and she's able to say, "Hey, man, Coach thinks you could be the best rebounder." He's told me that she's able to reinforce that on her own, not because she's trying to be a suck up or a brown noser, but because she knows that's the culture of our team.
Thanks, Hal, on that. Hey, I love my mic change. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Just that phrase that you can yell at them, but you have to love them more. That captures so much of that principle. Even your bucket now, that's a really good analogy with the bucket because culture, you try and say it is hard to maintain. And I heard another coach in the Final Four, in one of these clips, he talked about like there's a big difference too of like he knew how to follow culture. But a lot of times when you're coaching, you become head coaches. It's one thing to follow culture versus having to create it and maintain it.
And I'll say along that another analogy. I heard a really good track and field coach one time talk about, the atmosphere of your program. So you can start it off. So if we're going to put oxygen into this atmosphere, imagine we have like a tank, right? You can start it off, but you cannot sustain it on your own. That's where you got to get those players to sustain that culture, this positive culture, this culture of accountability, where it's not us versus them. It's not coach hates me. Another Steph Curry's college coach was a legend. He's retired named Bob McKillop, and I worked his camp for years. And one of my high school players played for him, and I heard him say many times, "I'm not doing this to you. I'm doing this for you." Right. And so he would try and drill that in. So if I'm holding you accountable, I'm not punishing you just to punish you. I'm punishing you to help you because I believe you can do better. And we need you to do better as a team. And so tying it back into the team, what your individual goals are. Maybe you've told me you want to play Division One. Maybe you've told me you want to play pro or you want to be an Olympian. So now I use that. And so we have clear goals for you as an individual. You believe in me. And so, hey, I want to, Jason, I want to help you be an Olympian. Okay? And so, in order to do that, this is what Olympians do. Right? And you might not understand that at your age, or you've never been around, or whatever it might be. So, you try and tie those individual goals into the feedback.
Great topic. And this is one of the, I feel like these are one of those challenges that you need even other coaches that you're working with and encouraging because it is a like just such an ongoing process. So we appreciate you guys, coming on here in these webinars just to continue to learn how to, in a way, plug the holes and be reminded, encouraged, and get new tools. Sometimes it seems like each hole might be a little different shape, so you got to figure out a little different, fix. All right, let's jump in. And we'll have time. We'll probably have time at the end to even dive in a little deeper at any lingering questions on some of this. But we're gonna go to the number two response that came up, and that's more is always better. And you said, Hal, this is one of your favorite. It sounds like this was one of your favorite topics and sayings. And so
Yeah,
why
yeah.
is
Well, this
that?
is probably one of my biggest pet peeves in coaching for sure. And I think a lot of times it comes from a good place. Because we think, well, if working out is good for me, then working out more would be better for me, and that's just not true. It's just like if I take a little bit of medicine, it might be good for me, but if I take too much, it can be bad for me. So, one coach I talked about when I worked for, he actually called it a prescription. Like you get a prescription for medicine, and he would have an individual skill prescription on how they would get better. And so, more is not necessarily better. In fact, it's usually not. And so if you look at anything, if you're weightlifting, for example, your body breaks down. There's micro tears in your muscles, there's micro fractures in your bone. And then through supercompensation, where your body actually recovers and grows back stronger. So those of you that have studied strength training, we talk about progression and overload. We're going to overload the body. We're going to challenge it in a progressive way. So that's really important, but you have to let it rest. You have to let it recover, and that's how it comes back stronger. And if you don't, so now I've worked out, I've depleted those physical resources, and then I got to work out again because more is better, and I've never recovered. That's where you're setting yourself up for not only fatigue and exhaustion, but overuse injuries, burnout injuries. And you're going to have a situation where you were trying to do the right thing, but you've actually set yourself back. And you can even take that. I mean, the Bible has the Sabbath concept where you're going to take a day off, right? Rest and recovery. It is so important that the coach both teach the importance of recovery and model it because coaches can do the same thing. If watching a little bit of film is good, then I'm going to watch 10 hours of film and I'm going to get less sleep. And I fell victim to that. When I was a young head coach, I said nobody was going to outwork me. I would sleep in my office as a high school head coach. I had to get on a ladder and go up to the ceiling and unscrew the light bulb so the light would turn out so I could sleep on my couch in my office because nobody was going to outwork me. And I thought that was a good thing. But you have to take care of yourself as a coach mentally. You need a break. You need to be, and people sometimes fight about the word balance. It's not balanced. If you're going to be good at something, you have to be devoted to it, and it's not going to be equal. But you have to have harmony in your life. You need to have other interests. You need to read. You need to have other things that uplift you for multiple reasons. I could talk about this a lot, but if your identity is just in this team, right, and just in our performance, you're setting yourself up for a big downfall.
Just to add to that, we had last month's webinar, we had Dr. Wayne Chappelle, who's the sports psychiatrist for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he's spoken to our Captains Academy leadership programs, but that is the message that he tells all the guys, like you have to have an identity outside of the game because if it's just in the game, there's so many ups and downs, it's not consistent. And when hard things do happen or an injury, if your identity is in your sport and you have an injury, then who are you when you can't play?
Can I add one thing too? I just thought of another example here in America. American football stereotypically is real macho, tough guy. And I coached football, American football, in high school, and you almost take pride in how many hours you put in. And the coach that just won the national championship took a team that had never won. They were the losingest team in the highest level of American football in the history of the sport. And they won the national championship. And he's talked about, and he's famous for having the shortest practices. He has shorter practices and was more successful. And you say, well, how is that possible? Because I know as a coach, there were times when I would think I could devote my entire practice time to skill work and it would not be enough time. Or I could devote my entire practice time to team strategy and tactics and inserting plays, and it would not be enough. So now I got to divide this up, and I wish I had more practice. And in American college sports, there's a limit on how many hours per week you have. But here's a coach that was super successful at the highest level by having shorter practices. So you say, well, how is that possible? What did that do? What forced you to be more efficient? And I would tell my players that. I would say, we're going to have shorter but efficient practices. What does that mean? There's no wasted time. We're going to hustle from drill to drill. We're going to go as hard as we can in this drill. And speaking for basketball, I don't know about in your culture, but traditionally in American basketball culture, you would do conditioning at the end where you would run and do sprints, transition drills back and forth. And I hated that as a player. All right. So I would sell to my players, we're not going to do that if we have a good practice. I'm going to incorporate the conditioning into the practice. All right, so we're getting it in the practice. Go as hard as you can because players will save themselves for the end. If I know I've got to run at the end, I'm going to hold something back because I know I have to run at the end. Well, that makes no sense. You have to practice how you're going to play. And playing hard could be one of the most important skills at any level, anywhere. And most players think they play hard and they have no idea. You have to teach that. You have to recognize it. You have to praise it publicly. You have to point it out. You find clips, video clips from your team, from other teams, and you're constantly reinforcing that.
And I'll add one more. We also talked last time on the Mamba mentality because that is sort of it's
Mm.
like you're fully devoted. You're just that's all you're doing is you're at the gym. Hearing you talk about sleeping in the office there, um, but there are things of that are admirable. The commitment. I think you nailed it there. Of like you need to be devoted, but it just can't be the only thing your life is revolved around. So it's sometimes it's hard, you take character qualities of Mamba mentality, which are there's good in it, but again, there's kind of that for athletes in action phrase we use total. There's more than just one component. All right, guys, keep if there's any questions, yeah, keep putting them in the chat box and we'll come back to some of them at the end here. All right, more is better. Number three. All right, it's well, kind of similar, but number three is you need a big budget to build a great program. And we actually had a couple questions on our survey that ended up being real similar, having the greatest, the latest tech gadgets, or you always see there's always all these different tools and tricks that are out there that a lot of times cost a lot of money. And so we need that to be able to perform at a high level. We have a lot of coaches that are trying to take their teams here and trying to raise their level of playing at the international stage. So they're trying to figure out how do we catch up with the big boys that have all the resources. That's a little of the context of probably our audience here. Uh, so Professor Wilson, you need a big budget to build a great program. Myth or true?
That's a myth for sure, and it is an excuse. Great coaches have said you can have excuses or results, but you can't have both. So I can complain, and it may be a fact. So understand, I'm not denying the reality. It may be a fact you don't have much court time. It may be a fact you don't have many basketballs or soccer balls or whatever your sport is much field time. All right, so your players are going to pick up on it. If you are complaining and making excuses, then so are they. And you're never going to perform at your best if you're making excuses. So that does not mean you act like everything is great. You can acknowledge it. So you may say to your team, you know what? We weren't able to get much court or field time, but we're going to do this, all right? We're going to use this to our advantage and not make an excuse. I'll give you an example right now in American men's college basketball. There's the tournament going on, and there's a team, the University of Houston, is getting to play in their home city uh, here in the next round. And they asked the coach that was going to play there, was that unfair? Was he upset about that? And he gave a great answer. Brad Underwood at the University of Illinois talked about, no, it was an opportunity and that he was not going to complain about getting to play, getting to advance in the tournament when he had played at lower levels, when you were driving a van, 16 hours to go play a game and using your own money to pay for gas. And this, I'm not going to complain about the opportunity to play, where a most casual fan would say, hey, that's not right, or that's not fair. So now his players see that. His players hear that. Now you've eliminated that excuse. Now that doesn't mean you don't try and fix it. Doesn't mean you don't try and be more efficient. And I'll give an example. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of, there's a device called the Vertimax. And the Vertimax is a wonderful piece of equipment, and it has bungee cords to it, and so you can work under tension and multiple planes of motion, can help you explosive speed, vertical jump. Players like it because you hook up, your arms, you can hook up these belts, you can do leg, and it's kind of cool, but it's very expensive, and you might not have the resources for one of those. So what do? Well, you can do plyometrics. You can use gravity and body weight to get similar results. You can do depth jumps where you're just on a box and you jump down. There's ways to overcome, and so don't make an excuse. If you are in a context where you can seek funding, and that is a possibility, I think you tie a specific ask to something that's going to benefit the athlete's care. For example, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to have a fundraiser, we need X amount of dollars for my basketball, soccer program, whatever. What is the money going for? Who is it going to? Here is, player X, whatever, this age, whatever. And we want to be able to provide nutrition so he or she can compete at their best. Right? Because I've had coaching in America where there's athletes, if they went home after school, they didn't have food in the house. They didn't have the opportunity to get a good pregame meal. They didn't have the opportunity to get a good snack. Right? So being able to provide nutrition pre-workout or post-workout is something that people that care about the whole athlete might be willing to support you for. Instead of just, I get so sick of seeing these calls where we want new uniforms. Do you? Do you really? You want new uniforms? You don't like your fancy uniforms you got 3 years ago, whatever it is, right? So, well, the kids want them. The kids like them. The players like. I understand that, right? But first, we got to take care of their basic needs, their physical, emotional. Is it tutoring? Is it SAT, ACT prep? Is it some life experience we can take them on? When we would go on long trips, I would make sure we would do cultural things. What is in this area? What is this area known for? What are their industries? And so everything was going to be educational. So if I was going to take a trip, number one, to get different competition under different referees, which would help prepare us for postseason, which was one of the reasons we would try to travel, right? But we'd also try educational, and then we're trying to then sell that and market that as we're trying to fundraise.
All right, we'll open up any questions on that one. You want to chat in? You know, this has come up in terms of the more is better. No matter what level of sports you're at, there's always a a bigger player. Like we're saying, you're talking about you work with the Georgia Southern Athletics, and so they're a Division I team. Compared to probably many of the coaches on here, you got a huge budget, but you're trying to compete with people that have 10 times the budget, or there's always schools that have more. And even the schools at the very top, they're trying to get more. Like I mean, in our world of the NIL now, it's like there's never no one says they have enough.
Right.
Seems to be the culture.
But American baseball, there's no salary cap in professional baseball, but the team with the highest payroll doesn't always win. In fact, they rarely have. So it's not a guarantee of success. And sometimes we get so focused on wanting to have the newest thing, the shiniest thing, the bells and whistles, that we miss out on the daily work. And I know a lot of people use the word grind. And one of my close friends is the head men's basketball coach at Tulsa, who's in the NIT Final Four right now. He's a very successful coach, and he doesn't allow his players to use the word grind. So this is not a grind because grind has this negative connotation to it in some senses. Like this is an opportunity. You're getting to play a sport you love, right? And I understand some people mean it as putting the work in. To them, it's a very positive thing. But I thought that was an interesting take on it.
Yeah, it is grind. It's always many all these words. There's like a healthiness to it, and but then you go like all in. There's sort of this like grind culture. It's all about grind, 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 and but the joy. Even to say, I know the Golden State Warriors a few years ago, they put like one of their sayings as a team was joy. So I think it's kind of that. How do you work hard? Like there's a value of working hard, pursuing excellence, but being able to find joy in there.
Right. And to your point though, and like you mentioned the mama mentality and that kind of thing. So the joy is not solely dependent on the outcome. I am not joyful just if we win or just if I start or just if I'm successful. The joy is in the process in doing something well together in a team sport. It's about a team sport. I heard a national coach of the year one time say sometimes people use fun as a cop out, like it's just not fun. And you'll hear that a lot. Well, it's not going to be fun all the time, right? And so he said, I define fun as doing something difficult well together. Doing something difficult well together is fun. So when we say that's what's fun to us and finding the joy in the process and wherever you are, taking it up a notch, on pulling your teammate up with you, that is the joy. Because if you only are joyful when you have success, it's a very shallow and a very difficult life.
And only one winner in the NCAA men's Division One March Madness. Most people end their season on a loss, unfortunately.
That is true.
The more is better in terms of our cult in American culture. What you find it goes down to the youth level. I just saw a post yesterday, a guy saying like how much families were paying for a baseball player to have the gloves and the bat. Like they basically unpacked their sports gear and it was like thousands of dollars of just equipment and so much of it is just keeping up for the appearances versus kind of what we're talking about. Are those things actually making you a better athlete or is it just it makes you feel like you're a high level athlete. All
No
right.
doubt.
We will. Okay. Next question here. All right. This one, I'd be curious, even your comments, how you guys, what you guys think of this one. But it is, you have to coach like Americans or Europeans to be successful. So we know a lot of our core audience is outside of those buckets. So there could feel a pressure to have to coach like the rest of the world in being successful.
Yeah, and I would say there's no one way to be successful. There's no surefire cookie cutter approach. Just in basketball in America, I worked in 10 different programs, and eight of those we won a championship or set a school record for wins. And every single one was different. Some in basketball were fast-paced, offensive minded, some were defensive minded. I had a young coach, a really experienced veteran coach. I was a head coach for some of those. So it's everything in between. And then my travels around the world, I've been able to go and be involved in some things like the Global Coaching Conference, the International Council for Coaching Excellence, and be able to speak with coaches from around the world. I do believe there are some principles that you should consider and think about, and does this fit in? Uh, but there's not one way to do it. And I think, and especially now because of technology, where in America we can watch games and clips in international basketball, and I think it goes both ways. We all learn from each other. If something is successful in one part of the world, we're going to say, "What will that be successful for me?" The problem is if you try to copy someone, if you just what I say blindly adopt, well, this play worked for Senegal or whatever, so I'm going to run it. Well, what players did they have, and who were they playing against? Or this play worked for the Warriors because they have Steph Curry. Well, do you have someone that can shoot like Steph Curry? So I think you're always looking what every coach needs to do, and like we mentioned, Coach Summit earlier. So I got to watch Coach Summit and be around Coach Summit. I cannot be Pat Summit, but I can take things and adapt them, not blindly adopt, but adapt them within my personality and where I'm coaching to try and say, does this fit with me? So I'm authentic, because that is a key with connecting with athletes. If I'm faking it because I saw this coach do it, um, they're going to know. They're going to know. And if I just take a play, this happens all the time in basketball. I saw a play last night in a game. So now we're going to go put it in with my team because that play worked. All right. Well, now what are you taking out? What are you losing? How much skill time are you losing? Is it that you need new plays or do you need to do your plays better? Is it execution? And so many of us, because we're trying to find the newest hot thing and we think, oh, I'm going to put this play in. So now I got to take the time to teach it. I've got to rep it. Maybe I'm going to run it 5-on-0. Now I'm going to defend it. And now I got to be able to execute it under pressure in a game. Is it worth that investment versus the time I put? Because I've never heard a coach say, I'm going to put in this play that doesn't work. Right? If you're putting in a play, you think it works. And hopefully ahead of time, you've evaluated what personnel do I have? Who am I going to competing against? Actually, when I did a talk about 10 years ago for USA Basketball, if I can say real quick, the six no's. A lot of times in coaches, people will have no's, N-O's, like no baseline, no middle, or no. But I'm talking about K-N-O-W, things you should know. Number one is you have to know yourself. Know yourself. What are your strengths and weaknesses? If I'm strong in one area and weak in another, hopefully I can be aware of that and I can have a staff member, an assistant coach, if I'm lucky enough to have an assistant coach who can complement me, maybe is stronger in an area where I'm weaker. You have to know the athletes. Ask them what helps you play your best. You'd be amazed the answers you hear. Right? Do I know the athlete? What's going on in their life? Do I know what's going on with their family? Do I know the challenges? Are they in school? Do they have financial issues? Is there family issues? Are there girlfriend, boyfriend issues? What is going on? What are their individual goals? Are their individual goals realistic? Yeah. Um, what am I asking them to do? What is the task? A lot of times as coaches, the longer it's been since we've coached, the less we remember. And so what I would do if I was going to do a drill or an activity, even something like an agility ladder or something, I would actually walk through it or try and go through it. Usually if I had access to the facility or even just going through it in my living room, where nobody could see me to make fun of me, right? But just actually walking through it. What am I asking them to do? Is this realistic? In basketball, is it realistic to ask a player to deny a pass, one pass away, and be there to help on a drive? Is that realistic? We used to ask players to do that. You don't usually see that anymore. Or is it more realistic to say, all right, if you're going to deny, you're going to give up something? So, what is the task? What is the environment? Who are we playing? Does the officiating matter? Sometimes, I know in America, like the state I live in, if you would go up in the mountains, the officiating would be very, very different than where I live. What is the environment? Who am I playing against? Is the playing surface feel different? Are there different rules in this area? So, what is the environment? Who am I playing is number five. Who's the opponent? Because I do believe you should have a system that's flexible. And sometimes I may have to adjust. And that's why I think you should design your system to reach whatever your goals are. If my goal is to win the nationals or to win the state or the region, whatever, what do I have to do to win at that level? That's my goal, and plan backwards from that. Because I may be able to win in my local area, whatever you call your conference or whatever it might be called, and that might not work at the next level. So do I want to try and adjust? So now I'm not changing at the last minute who we are and what we do because we have this new opponent, or we're going to try and play this way all year. And then the last thing, number six, is it always goes back to your motives or your why. Why are you doing what you do? Are you doing it just because you want a championship ring? You want the notoriety? You want a line on your resume? Why are you doing what you do? And you've got to know that and keep that in center. So those are the six no's I think every coach needs.
All right. Thank you for those. Coaches, again, we always use that chat box. Any questions that you come up, but we're going to go to our last set question, and then we'll.
Hey Jason, let me answer this one question I see here. Um, oh wait a minute, let me go back. I saw another one. Let's see.
Okay, there's one from Robert. Says, "Hello, I'm coaching my kids, and sometimes it's hard to get their attention. How do we solve this problem?" That is I'm coaching some youth sports. I've been wondering this one too, and that is a
Yep.
unique skill set of.
I- Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, the younger they are, the shorter the attention span. A lot of times, coaches, we want to, and maybe not even consciously, but we want to show off how much we know. I want to prove that I deserve this job. So I'm going to give you way more information than you need. And actually, and Sarah Evans is on the call. I worked for a coach named Paul Webb, and he was the best coach I've ever been around at giving the players only what they needed. And I remember the first day I went, I was a professor at Georgia Southern, but I wanted to just keep coaching. So I went to help him coaching varsity girls basketball. And the first practice, they had won the state championship the year before. They've been, I think it was 33-1 the year before, and had a lot of the players back. I go to this first practice, and we were doing what's called the shell drill. If you know basketball, it's one of the most basic basketball drills, just positioning. Usually start 4-on-4. And we're doing this drill, and I'm watching, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, we're doing everything wrong. And I'm the new coach, and I'm like, what in the world? How did this team win the state championship? And so I walk over to coach, and I kind of put my hand over my mouth so no one can see what I'm saying. And I'm like, Coach, are you seeing this? Is this how you teach shell? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I pointed out, like I don't, it seemed like 100 things I was saying. He goes, oh yeah, I see that. He says, we're going to fix one today. And so instead of trying to fix 100 things at once, he would focus on one thing that day. And let's focus on this one thing. So I didn't overburden them, having them think, because the more you think, the slower the feet. The more you think, the slower the feet. So if I'm making them think about 100 things, I'm not going to perform as efficiently as fast as I can under pressure. So pick that one thing and then what I did later in my career, what I started doing, again, looking at the psychology of coaching, especially young people, we would have an emphasis in basketball. So adjust this to your sport. So, but in basketball, we would have an offensive, defensive, and rebounding emphasis. Going back to Coach Summit, she said offense sells tickets, defense wins games, and rebounds wins championships. So we wanted to have a weekly emphasis in those three areas. And we would, in our practice plan, so we would have a piece of paper where the plan was written on, that would be posted so the players could see, and that was at the top. So so defensive emphasis might be, and you want it to be something memorable and short and sweet, something like no stance, no chance. It rhymes. You got to get low. You got to get in a stance. And so that was our defensive emphasis for a week, every day. And we would talk about it. And then in the locker room, I would have that. And so we would add to it over the season. So then by the end of the season, however long your season is, every week we've added this principle that's been reinforced and we've gone over it instead of trying to throw 9,000 things at them at one time because you do know a lot as a coach. You're on clinics like this, webinars like this. You've read, you've played probably, you talk to people. You have a lot of knowledge, right? But you want to be that gentle, steady rain instead of that downpour. That gentle rain soaks in. So you want to drip it out in a way they can digest it.
All right, thanks, Hal. Before we go to I know another question came in. Before we go to that one, let's go to our last myth, truth or myth that we're going to unpack here. And it's winning is the only measure of a good coach. Truth or myth?
I would say that is a myth, and you would have to, again, this goes back to your culture and where you're coaching. If I'm a professional level coach, that's where I'm being paid, and maybe that's the expectation, and I've got to win, and that's it. That's how I'm evaluated. That's where something you should clarify before you take a job. know what the expectations are. All right. And it goes back to my six no's. The last one, remember, was your why. So why are you coaching? If you are just coaching for wins and medals and championships, you will never win enough. You will never be enough. You will never be satisfied. So why are you coaching? Yes, you want to win. I wanted to win every game I ever played. If we played checkers, if whatever, any game, I want to win today. If we're playing a card game, I want to compete. But you're not going to win them all, probably. I hope you do. Right? So what is it? So we talk about transferable life skills. You're learning transferable life skills. I'm learning, say, for example, adversity. I lost my starting job. That's some adversity. Well, you might lose your real job. How are you going to handle adversity in the future? Maybe you are a captain on the team, and so you're having to be verbal, and maybe being verbal is not natural to you. But I'm learning a skill, and now I'm going to be a business owner in the future. I'm going to have to speak at a meeting, a government meeting, or try and earn a contract or something. So there are these transferable life skills that go far beyond the game. Why am I doing this? Because I'm willing to bet if we ask right now, everybody on this call, if I said to you, is there a coach that won in your area? The coach won, and they were a bad coach. Has anybody seen that? They were not a good coach, but they still won. When I ask my students that, and in our master's program, we have students from 30 states and 8 countries. They're always like, it's like immediately, oh, yes, 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 this person, was a moron, right? But somehow they won because I had a great player or players, right? And it goes the other way too. So, what is a good coach or an effective coach or a great coach? I think trying to get the most out of your team, every program has a ceiling that you're trying to get them to. You're trying to maximize what you can get from them. And so, for example, my goals didn't change. Every year in the regular season in basketball, we wanted to win it, finish in first place until that wasn't an option. And when first place wasn't an option, we wanted to finish second. When second wasn't an option, we wanted to finish third. Then we get into our tournament, we want to win the tournament. Well, we want to advance. And I've heard a lot of coaches say, like in college basketball, just getting to the NCAA tournament is a huge honor. Right? But if your goal is to get to the NCAA tournament, well, what happens when you get there? Right? So, like my college coach, he always told us our goal is to advance in the tournament, not just to get there. Well, if you advance in the first round, what's your goal? It's to advance, right? Keep advancing. So, the impact you have on their lives, we've talked about the holism, the whole person. And those of you on the call that have coached for a while, you know this. Um, I literally got a text message yesterday from a young man that I coached. Let me do the math here. 28 years ago. I coached him 28 years ago when he was 11 years old, and he sent me a message. And now he said, Coach, I'm gonna, and he ended up being a junior college All-American, and then he went into law enforcement, and now he's got kids. He says, I've just taken a job, my first coaching job as a middle school basketball coach. So, grade 6 through 8. And he was so excited. And he said, his exact words, he said, I want to be like you. Right? That is as good as a championship. In America, a lot of times you get these championship rings if you win a championship, and they're sometimes gaudy. And sometimes I'll bring one in. Um, those rings have never messaged me, have never called me, had never emailed me, never said, Coach, I got the job. Coach, we're having a baby, whatever. But the players do, the people do. And now going back to Coach Summit said you win with people. Coach Nick Saban is one of the best coaches of all time in American football. He's retired now at Alabama, and he's famous for the process, focusing on the task in front of you and the process, not the outcome. But it doesn't matter what your process is if you don't have the people. You have to care about your people and they have to know it. And sometimes, especially as a young coach, I did care about my players. I did sleep in the office, and that was an act of care, right? An act of service, right? But I did not communicate well enough, and it may be because I'm a male, it may have been because I was young, but I did not communicate well enough with my players to express how much I did care about them individually and as a team. And I hope I got better at that as I went on. Um, I'll stop there for a second.
And Coach, we talk a lot about within our athletes in action umbrella, we talk about the total athlete, which is the
Yep.
physical, the mental, the spiritual. We really focused a lot last month on the mental, We know, coaches are diving into the physical every day. There is this unique space of the spiritual, which is Athletes in Action is one of our unique spaces to seek to cultivate, encourage, empower other coaches to be able to step into this holistic approach, including the spiritual. What insights do you have of winning as a coach, of like the significance of just that, the spiritual integration of who someone is into
Yep.
serving as a coach?
I think like I coached outside of Atlanta, Georgia. If you don't know where that is, it's big city, very diverse. So, for example, I'm a Christian. It's very important to me. But I had athletes there. I had Muslim, Hindu, every type of person. All right. So I love them the same. I would tell them, and I would tell the parents in the meeting, you know, you're not going to play any more or less based on your beliefs. I just want you to know where I'm coming from. When I was getting my PhD, so this was back 2014, I studied head college basketball coaches at public universities. I did men's and women's coaches, and I'll throw one name out there, like for example, was Tony Bennett. Tony Bennett was the head men's basketball coach at the University of Virginia, won the national championship. He's retired recently. Um, so I would talk to them and I would ask them, I would say, tell me about your program. I would read their website. We have what we call media guides, where it was used to be a book, used to be a physical book. They would send to the media that would have all the history of the coaches, the players, the facilities, and it usually has their philosophy. And so here's what you're saying you're about. I would ask them to tell me about it. I would go watch practices. I would go to their media availability. I would go to games. I'll go to pregame training and looking for alignment because step one is you have to know what you're about, right? You need to put it in writing. It's going to change, but if you don't have it in writing, you're just going to blow with the wind and you're just going to go, you hit that losing streak and all of a sudden, oh, I got to change everything. Well, do you believe in your system and who you are? All right. So that's why you got to put it in writing. And so for these coaches who happen to be Christian, now wanted to study Christians at the highest level, it gave them a great sense of peace. And I saw a question in the chat about pressure. We all feel the pressure as a coach because we're competitors. And there's a lot of research that says the higher level you go, the more pressure you feel. As a coach that's been at every level, I don't know that that's necessarily true in my personal experience. Because when I was coaching JV and nobody was there, I still had the same amount of pressure I felt, coaching at the highest level on ESPN. It's just more people are aware of it and more people have an opinion. But so that pressure, so if you understand your worth, again, going back to your joy, your identity is not tied on the scoreboard, right? It gave them a great sense of peace during the pressure. It gave them a great perspective. They understood it was about more than that. It was about more than a championship. I tell people if your biggest goal is to win a championship, your goals are much too small. You want to impact these people for life. In college, a lot of coaches will say it used to be you would play in college for 4 years. So is it a 4 year relationship or a 40-year relationship? We're talking about long term. Uh, I was just a walk-on. If you don't have a scholarship, you're called a walk-on. All right. So I was a walk-on. So you had 12 guys on scholarship and then me. So I was basically a practice player. My college coach to this day sends me snail mail, hard copy, written piece of paper mail every week. Not because I was some star, because I wasn't, but he does it to everybody that ever played for him or worked with him. All right, so that has impacted me. I have for over 20 years, the first assignment in my classes, and when I would have my teams and tryouts even, I would have them write a thank you letter to a coach that impacted them. And it made a difference. I've had players tell me, and I've had coaches reach out to me that receive them and thank them because coaching is hard. So again, are you modeling that? So getting them to have, I always talk about an attitude of gratitude. I say an attitude of gratitude gives you altitude. It lifts you and others up. So forcing them to do that, to write that letter and then getting it back and being aware that coaching is difficult at every level. I don't care where you are in the world, it is hard. And everybody else in the stands or anybody else watching thinks they know more than you. All the experts are along the fence line or sitting in the stands or sitting at home watching on TV. It is difficult. But if you have beliefs, if you're grounded and centered, and for me, my Christian faith, right, it lets me know that my identity is in Christ. It's not in how many championships, right? That I want to let the love and the light of Christ shine through me in the way I deal with the officials, the way I deal with my administrators, respect for authority. I had an athletic director one time who had misinterpreted a state rule and it set us back. Everybody else in the state was doing something and we weren't allowed to do it. And my players knew it, and I knew it. So I didn't lie. I told them, you know what? I'm working through the process with our AD. I disagree, but he's my boss. I'm going to respect authority. Right? And we worked through it. So that set an example. My high school football coach, I had two players who got arrested for breaking and entering, stealing things. I remember him at practice saying, I'm not going to be at practice today because I'm going to go spend time with these two young men because I still love them. They made a big mistake. And it had a huge impact on me. And seeing that he missed practice this day to love on these people that made a mistake. And then when I was a head coach later, I had a young lady that stole some things and got in trouble. And we were able to similarly do the same thing and bring her in restoration. And she apologized, and her teammates forgave her. And so I think there's just so much more than wins and losses. But if you have something greater than that, if you have a faith, I think that can help you get through it. Because one of the coaches in my study was getting fired. He knew he was getting fired at the end of the season because they had not won enough games. But he had such a peace and such a belief in God's will for him that this was going to be okay, that he was going to trust it, even though he didn't agree with it, understand it. And so seeing that firsthand, there was another coach in the study. Um, she had been a player in a program, very successful. Now she was a head coach. I go and watch her in her shoot around. And in shoot around, there was a young woman who kept making mistakes over and over and over again. And I was so frustrated. I didn't even know the plays, but I could tell she was screwing up. And I remember the head coach, she called the play over and she put her arm around her. And I could just see her encouraging her. I don't know what was said. That night, she had 27 points, hit the game winning shot to beat a team they had not beaten in many, many years. So she obviously knew that individual. And so I think that player probably remembers that. I think her teammates probably remember that lesson that's going to go far beyond. And that comes with the forgiveness and the grace that we're given, through Jesus. It's the same kind of, grace and forgiveness we want to give our players when they make a mistake, while still holding them accountable.
And how something you said, if you looked at the very first myth to bust of pressure, one of the things you said is you have to love them more than you yell at them, and so you can yell at them, you just got to love them more. And I think ultimately, so you need to know that you're trying to have your players know that you love them. But I think for us as a coach, like what we're pointing to is, as a coach, to be able to love others, you have to first be loved. And I think what I think is so beautiful about the Christian framework is that it is that God loved us first. And by understanding his love, that's actually the like our superpower to be able to love others on our teams. And as athletes in action, that's a unique area that we do want to help cultivate. And if you are on a spiritual journey, you can reply to one of our emails if you want to learn more about just who God is, how to walk out your faith. We actually have athletes in action staff in over 60 countries around the world. Um, and we want to journey with you. We want to provide high level coaching instruction, but at the same time, we do believe that you mentioned our ceiling earlier, Coach. To reach our ceiling, we believe to reach that is to know who we are and who God created us to be, and to live in accordance with that is how we reach our. I love our AIA president has a phrase of reach our destiny that God has developed for us. So we'd love to continue on with that, but again, there's no requirements of what you hold to be a part of any of these our community. Uh, Coach, if you're able to take some Q&A, we'll keep the hallway open as you're able for a few minutes. But before we do that, is there anything I want to make sure before people might have to roll out here? You run a program at Georgia Southern University to get kind of academic credentials in coaching. Would you like to make a little commercial for that, and then we'll put some info in the email as well.
Sure. Yeah. So we have a master's degree. So it's a master's of kinesiology with an emphasis in coaching education. So we have coaches from every level, from youth to professional. Most of the coaches in it are kind of high school or college. But so we go through in the United States, we have the national standards for sport coaches, which are 43 standards. So we cover all 43 standards. And it's what I say. I'd never heard of those standards the first 18 years I coached. And it's what great coaches do naturally. But if I had known them, I would have been a better coach faster. So we teach you how to take those and apply them instantly with your program. You go through with a cohort. You start one summer and you finish the next. So you're done in 13 months. It's fully online. We've had people, well, we've got a gentleman in the program right now from India. We've had people from 8 different countries. So it's flexible. You never have to be online at the same time. You just have to meet the deadlines. We cover everything from administrative tasks to the physical part of it, to the sports psychology part of it, to how to design practices and games. There's no sport specific stuff. It's just all about the other things of coaching, and it's been really good. I had a coach in there who had won 3 national titles. He'd won 3 national championships, coached for over 20 years, and he was in our program. And I asked, "Why are you in the program?" He said, I want to get better, which is probably why he had already won 3 national titles. So I think the best players want that feedback and the best coaches want to get better. So whether you're a young or an old coach, I mean, you have to have an undergraduate degree from an accredited institution, you have to be proficient in English. But I think Jason can send out the link. But if you just Googled Georgia Southern coaching education, you could probably find that master's degree. But we'll send the exact link out, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, we will put that in the email, and I will also just throw a link in here for those looking at it right now. All right. Well, Professor Wilson, we'll keep it open, but thank you so much for just jumping in. And I like seeing you rev up as we got going, kind of hit some passion points here.
Yeah.
Maybe Sarah Evans is all right. Is anything you say? How did you know him as Coach Wilson? Unless maybe he had another coaching name. Did he have a coaching nickname or just Coach Wilson?
He was Coach Hal for us.
Oh, okay.
Coach
Coach
Hal.
Hal.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Anything now to open mic, Sarah, anything you want to comment about Coach Hal? Did he coach according to how he spoke academically?
I mean, I would say so, yeah. I mean, it's been cool for me to learn. I would say even more from him, even like as I've transitioned from being a player to even coaching and just everything like since he coached me, continuing to learn from him in many different ways, even after being a player underneath him. So, yeah, full of a lot of wisdom. So it's always cool to continue to hear from him.
All right. Hey, simple question from I'll just ask for Giannis from Latvia here. He's on the video. Could you just repeat what your PhD thesis was?
The title of it was Peace Under Pressure. Um, it's free. It's online. It's long. It's about over 300 pages. It's qualitative. Um, I can send that out if you're interested. But so I look specifically at Christian coaches at public universities because in America, there's a difference in what you're allowed to say at a public university versus at a private. So we wanted to look at those constraints as well. And so, yeah, thank you for asking. I do a lot of work on that. I started some classes on religion and sport at Georgia Southern, where we look at the 5 major world religions. And so I've always looked at integration. I'll tell one quick story, if you don't mind, Jason. Is so a lot of times we look at your religious beliefs as a coat, and sometimes in America, think we've got to take that coat off before you go to work. And I can't ever talk about my faith, and that's not what the law says. In America, you are allowed to talk about your faith, but what you cannot do is force somebody else. You cannot force your coat on somebody else. And I think the way you live, the way you behave is more important than what you say anyway. So, but I did want to tell them, there's my beliefs. And then I wanted to live up to that. So I know I put a target on my back because I do need to, I'm not perfect. Nobody is, right? But I am forgiven. So I think that's a really important thing, a part of being authentic again. And like I said, I had Muslim players, Hindu players, Jewish players, every different religion, and I had great relationships with all of them.
I'm gonna go. Uzman, would you like to unmute and ask your question? I don't think we got to that one that you put in. We'd love to hear if you want to introduce yourself and ask Coach Hal personally.
Uh, Thank you, Jason. My name is Usman, and I am from Pakistan, and I am currently coaching children and teenagers in school. And I was also the part of ILS school in South Africa, where I met some of AIA athletes in Ultimate Camp, where I did my sports leadership training. And I am doing sports ministry in Pakistan in the southeast of the country, near Afghan border. I live in Peshawar, and I am not from KPK, from the southwest. I am from Punjab side, and living in the cross culture experience, also teaching young people. Here in KPK, the major sports is cricket and volleyball, and I play both. I teach both, and I'm coaching now teenagers and youth. My question was, how can I get the online university undergraduate degrees? Because I am graduate in my country, but it is not acceptable in European or American universities. So how can I get more information regarding this, and how can I enroll myself in these courses so that I can coach well?
Hmm. Right. Yeah. So I deal primarily with the at the graduate level. So the undergraduate level, I wouldn't be an expert on, but I can do some research on that end. But I think it would be every college university would have different rules on that. I don't have a great answer for you off the top of my head right now, but I can definitely look into that and maybe we can get something to you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Uzman. Great to hear from you. We go before Emmerich, you had your hand up. Then we got Kyle next.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening for those who are the evening time. So my name is Emric Maluta, Ora from Gabon, and I'm currently the senior women national team, and I'm coaching. I have my team coaching kids, youth, and senior women and men. So just my question is, and first of all, I think it's a blessing for me to have Coach Hal on today. And I just want to know how, if you ever had like passionate kids, passionate basketball kids with limited resources. And this is the first part of my question. And the second part is how do you, if yes, how do you manage to keep that fire like on for those kids? If no, you have anything similar, or which best advice can you give me for me to keep going with these kids?
Okay. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your questions. Let me make sure I understood them. The first one you said was it a talented player with low resources? Was that what you said?
Yes, passionate kids, passionate basketball kids with
Mhm.
low resources or no resources at all.
And so what to motivate them, to coach them? What's the question?
Oh no, that the question is, these kids when you have them younger, you can put the passion, everything you have in the tank to. So man, when they start growing, now they need to like most of them need to like trying to go like move on with their lives, right? So and But like having these kids like at a certain age and then growing up and then you don't have resources to help them, even achieve
Mm.
the minimum stuff they can achieve. That's the
Mm.
thing. So I'm asking if you ever had like situation where you have passionate kids
Yes.
and with no resources to help them, keep
Right.
going in their lives. That's what I'm asking.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a difficult situation, and probably I would say because of like right now, us talking today, the magic of the internet, there is more availability than you would think. So I would probably, as a first step, look for are there people with similar backgrounds that have made it from your area, that have advanced that next level? Are there people you can reach out to? Because I tell my students all the time, especially when you're young, at least in our culture, people are more willing to help a young person. So I tell my college students, email, reach out, contact people. And and even in fact, when I was a graduate assistant coach at Tennessee, I wrote a letter to every Division I coach, which is over 300 coaches in America, uh, because I was trying to reach out. Now, I only got responses from about 8 out of over 300, but those 8 were fantastic. And then following up. So is there someone you can reach out? Is there someone that, and then just leverage that. And it's not trying to pull on the heartstrings or talk, but just say, if you can have an intelligently worded, hey, I saw you were successful and you praise them. You've done X, Y, and Z, and I am trying to learn. Uh, can you help me? And it could be they could help you by just talking with you. And they may have some connections. They may know, oh, yeah, you need to connect with this person or this organization. So I think you're always trying to find that network. And then that network that you're trying to build and find is not that you always want something from someone, it's that you also have something to offer. It's that, I want to support you. I want to give back to the next generation. I want to help the next person after me. I want to pass this information on. It's not just me. But I think leverage that. Here's my situation. I'm looking for help. You've been successful. Is there an organization like Athletes in Action? Is there a governmental organization, Ministry of Sport, or something you can connect with? Is there some other, regional, FIBA or something, or whether through FIFA or whatever that you can connect and find? I don't know about the rest of the world, but in America, in most sports, there's an organization like in basketball in America, on the men's side, there's the NABC, the National Association of Basketball Coaches, and they have professional development opportunities. On the women's side, there's the WBCA. Is there a professional organization like that you could reach out to? But anytime trying to leverage those personal connections would be the first thing. And I'm sorry, I forgot your second question was what? I'm sorry.
Oh, muted.
Yes, the second question was uh
Passion, right?
yes,
Yeah.
about yes, how do you keep the passion on, like,
Yeah.
so that they don't get motivated if they are like waiting on something that you cannot give them.
Right. So I think again, going back to that living in harmony, like you've got to be able to have something in the tank. You've got to take care of yourself, but you got to love what you do. I mean, in the college classroom, my students evaluate me, all professors, every semester, and one of the first things they always mention, I just had my annual review with my boss, is so many students wrote in about my passion in the classroom. It's not fake. People poured into me, invested in me, and I'm trying to pass it on and give back. And so that's a real thing. And so I would talk about my coaches with my players and the impact they had on me. I think it's got to be real. There's a saying, your head coach and your best player can't have a bad day in practice. All right, you set the tone. Every day in practice, I would say it's a great day for basketball. Over the top, maybe silly, but players years later will still come up, or message me and say that, and trying to have moments like of building personal connections with players. So maybe during a stretching routine or a warm-up routine, I'm finding a way to individually interact with them and build that, because you don't want to be just a rah-rah, corny old man that's just being wild for no reason. But it's that, again, I love what we do. Hey, we've got a half a court. awesome. We got a half court today. Man, it's going to be the best half court practice ever. We got one basketball or we got one soccer ball. Man, we're going to do more with this one soccer ball than any team in the world today. Right. And so it's how you frame things. And for example, at Georgia Southern, where we are, they started a football, American football program. They didn't even have a football. They had to go to the store to buy a football. And the coach here, there was a drainage ditch that ran through the practice field, a drainage ditch. There's gnats. It wasn't a very pleasant place to be. And the head football coach, instead of saying we have this nasty drainage ditch running through our practice field, said, that is beautiful Eagle Creek, because we were the Eagles as our mascot. Beautiful Eagle Creek. And it's got magic waters, right? And they would take a jug and fill it up with water on road games and pour it out on the field. And now instead of, man, we got this drainage ditch, no, it's beautiful Eagle Creek. And now they actually dunk the president. When we get a new president, they dunk them in the creek. It's become such a part of the culture of trying to turn a negative into a positive and selling it. And so I think that's so important. You set the tone as the coach. So your passion has got to come from you. But I think when you have those deep relationships with your players, you'll get passion. When you hear from those players previously, like it fires you up. You're like, yes, let's go. Right. And say you're in a place that's hot. When I was playing high school football and you're wearing all this equipment in American football, it gets very hot. You can complain about it. I remember to this day, my high school football coach, instead of complaining about the heat and the humidity in the American South is very humid, he would say, turn up the heat and just yell it out. We were going, turn up the heat instead of, man, it's hot today. No, turn up the heat. Let's go. Your attitude and your perspective, I think the players pick up on, and they'll remember that. So it can't be fake. Sometimes you do have to generate it when you might not have it. But if you have a relationship with the players, I remember one time at the end of my career, I went back to coaching middle school girls. And there was a day I had a lot going on and I was pretty down. And I told them, I said, you know what, ladies? I've had a rough day. I've got this stuff going on. I'm going to need you to pick it up and bring the energy today. And they did. All right. Because I cared about them. They cared about me. They're like, we got you, coach. And it was such a cool moment.
We got a couple questions keep coming in. Kyle,
Let's
you're up.
call.
Then Elton, you're on deck.
Jason, if you allow me, man, I want to take a point of privilege and just celebrate how I really want this group to recognize just the impact that Hal has had on a lot of coaches. He was a huge impact on my coaching career. I go back to Hal, and if you all can find it, if you all on this call can find it, Hal had a podcast. I was working as a graduate assistant coach at the University of Rio Grande in Ohio, and I came across Hal's podcast. It's called Coaching Basketball Wisely, and it was one of the greatest teaching informational tools that I've ever listened to. I'm a big podcast listener. But Hal has had a huge impact on me as a coach. I would go on and become a head coach. I coached women's basketball for maybe 10 years or so. And Hal, I don't know if you know this, like I started Hoops Day with our group.
Nice.
And had our kids going around campus and taking pictures, handing out schedule cards to professors. I just learned so much from you on how to build culture, how to build a program, but to do it in a way that was loving and was spiritual and really developed people. That was that I felt like I was already inclined to, but you provided community for me. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for your friendship. And I'm thankful for all the work that you continue to do to help and develop coaches. I want to encourage this group, with the ways that we're able to connect today with social media. You all need to be following Hal. He shares tons of information, and his spirit is in the right place as to how and why we should be doing these things that we're doing in the lives of people. So, Jason, thank you for this call today. This was really refreshing to be in a group of coaches who are like-minded, like-spirited, but also to spend this time with Hal and to listen to him go and to share his passion for the ministry of coaching. I yield my time.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Kyle. Glad you're able to get on and hear that significance. Just the power of a coach, and it's interesting all the power. I mean, basketball is relationships, I think, or sport. It's really a lot of relationships. All right, we're gonna go probably the other side of the world here from Kyle to Elton. Elton, tell us where you are, and then you can ask your question.
Hi guys, hi Coach Hal, hi Jason. Thank you so much. I am currently in Uganda, and I'm a Zimbabwean, so I was very happy to see Xavier on the call. I was like, oh yeah, hey dude, long time. We used to play against each other,
Yeah.
so that's a love-hate relationship right there. And I, I loved all the nuggets Hal gave us. So I was there, and I was like, you know what? That is such an amazing nugget in terms of building cultures and all of that, and also making connection. So I was coaching in Saudi Arabia before, and I actually was a pioneer coach in Koba. So in Saudi Arabia, they don't allow males to coach females. Okay. So
Right.
I had a group of girls who I was coaching, and it was under 13 girls, and I had two groups who I was coaching, and then one of them actually reached out and she goes, Coach, I got selected into the regional team, and I want to thank you so much. The way you coached me, it's like I'm a class above the rest. So now I'm here in Uganda, and I have an under 16s team, and they are potentially so talented, and they've got so much to give, but our season is basically 3 months. It is 3 months where I get a group of kids, I have to somehow coach them and make them really at least, compete against teams which are being trained the whole year. Whereas I start from August and then I'm playing in January with a month break in there. I wanted to ask Coach Hal, how can we leverage such a short training period to get the best out of the players? Because, mind you, the under 16s league which we play in is the most competitive in terms of the skill level, and the kids who are putting in enough effort in there, because this is their point in time where they can break the ceiling and then get called up into the national team, into being called into other countries to play for them. So this league is very competitive, but I only have 3 months, and some of the kids do not even know how to bounce a basketball, but I do my best. I know that every time they come out on the other end, they're like, Coach, we wish we had more time, because in the turnaround time we've played better, we've had fun, though it is an intense training.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. That's a tough situation. They're lucky to have you. I would say that what came to mind were a couple of things. Again, you can have excuses or results. You can have both. So that you detailed a difficult situation. So what can you do in that situation? One thing that came to mind was there was an American soccer or football coach named Anson Dorrance. He won, I don't know the exact number, about 20 national championships. And I heard him on a webinar like this, and he was speaking. And he used to be the U.S. national team coach as well. But decades ago, when they didn't put many resources into the women's national soccer team. So he talked about when he selected players, he specifically looked for players who were going to train on their own. Now, he could provide them a program, but they had to be self-motivated, because if you just came to their camp and just went and played, you were not going to be ready. And so with my teams, even when I was coaching middle school girls at the very end of my coaching career, right, that's something I would harp on constantly, is if you just shoot at practice, you'll never reach your potential. You have got to find time to work on your own. So, well, coach, I don't have a goal. Find one, right? There's a way. Okay. If you don't have a goal, can you work on ball handling? I don't have a ball. Can you work on footwork? You can work on something. Can you work on strength? Can you do planks? Can you work on core? There's something you can work on no matter where you are, but you've got to create the system. And it goes back to kind of when we're talking about the myths, so, like being hard on them. Like when I was coaching boys, we had a thing in the summer we called the 10,000 shot challenge. And so from the end of our season to the start of the next one, I wanted them to make 10,000 shots. I wanted to record it, right? And we divided it up by day. It's not that many if you look at it by day. But here's the thing. We had an incentive. We were going to recognize them if they reach certain levels and stuff. That's one thing, right? But they would never take 10,001 or more if they were just doing it out of fear. It was just, you have to, because I'm the coach and I said so. They might comply. There's compliance. All right, I'll do it because coach said so. But they're never going to do more. So think back to our talk earlier about the joy. The joy isn't getting better. So I had one thing where we had a cowbell in practice. I don't know, Sarah, if you remember uh, the cowbell the year after, that was after you were gone. Maybe you heard about it. But we would do shooting drills in practice and we would record them. And if a young lady either improved, so if say she shot 10 shots and she made one, that's not good. But the next time she made two, she got to come ring the cowbell and everybody had to cheer for her because she improved. So if you either improved or you met the standard of excellence, which was relative to wherever you were. So for that group, it might have been 7 out of 10, right? Then you got to ring the cowbell. So we were celebrating excellence and we were celebrating improvement. And so that growth mindset, that culture. So can you, I don't know, Elton, can you leverage, can you make videos? Are there videos out there you can send to them? Can you have them make videos? Um, can you find a way to encourage them, to incentivize them to do more than you can ask them to do, and just be real with them. All right. And then it goes back to their goals. If your goals are to advance, you can't be a 3-month player. All right. Those don't align. So you either have to change your goals or change your behaviors and just make that reality for them. And they're like, I'm here to help you. However, and I don't know how that might be for you, but I'm here to support you. And maybe it's connecting to someone or connecting them to online resources, whatever they have access to, trying to get them to want to do it and find the joy. And it is really a joy in improving and sharing that and then celebrating each other. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
And a lot of time you didn't use the word there, but creating pathways. So when you're not with them, do they still have a pathway that they could track? We had another webinar last year that he called it well, he runs a shooting program called the driveway. So he called it, and then he had like the sidewalk of excellence. And it was just kind of all the skills to develop, but it was clearly laid out so everyone knew kind of the similar skills that they were trying to progress through. But finding things that work for your team, like kind of personalized for your, where your team's at. Well, Coach Hal, thanks for being on. I gotta exit here. But it was I appreciate the interaction, coaches. I enjoyed it was extra interactive today. And Coach, you still got a bunch of people hanging on, listening in. So
This has been
just a
fantastic.
fun interaction, fun to have. It's just a joy to have so many countries represented around the world, and just pursuing this concept of being a total coach and just incorporating the physical, mental, spiritual. Some coaches, we can talk the holistic, but just caring for the whole person. And I
Right.
think in a way we get to be a part of a movement of coaches that don't follow all the myths. Again, each myth has some truth in it, but to not be totally bought in to those things, and that there are uh, some truths. And I think, we didn't say it directly, but coaching, it came up in some different ways, but coaching with love is if you almost had to say after what is the secret ingredient, and it's coaching with love, and you have to and knowing love to be able to coach with love. Because and Hal even mentioned like with your program, how do you build a culture like with love in it? Um, anyway, so it's a special group to be a part of, just exploring that, and then also just what you talk about, just you can still pursue excellence. And we even believe that love is almost like that secret ingredient that helps excellence take root. With that, friends, great to be with you. You guys know my friend. I've been talking with my friend John Farwell about doing our webinar for next month. But we will we'll send out in the no email. I'll have Coach Hal's info on there, and usually able to create some articles and stuff out of the talk and some other content. Great to be with you. Also, if you go to the website, we do have some of you know about our in-person Coach International Coaches Academy. Um, if you know about that or talk, if you know local Athletes in Action staff, it'd be great to ask them about that, about getting on the radar of getting an invite to be able to participate with that. But that will be in November in Ohio this year, coming up. All right. Blessings, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank
See
you.
you, Coach Hal.
Appreciate
See
you guys so much.
Ooh, class must have finished.
Yeah, yeah. I'm about to take a couple of my students over to the community college because they do dual enrollment. So, yes, sir.
Okay, and where are you at
I
located?
Memphis, Tennessee at Middle
Oh,
College.
you're okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys. All. Thank you, and God bless you. See you next.
All
Thank you,
right. See you,
Jason.
Parfait.
Okay.
Hal, you
Thank
said
you.
Parfait. That's he
Yeah.
mentioned a little comment. He made Parfait. You look great in our promo flyer.
Yeah. How about
Yes,
that?
I'm very happy to take my picture.
Yeah. Good to see you again.
Okay, congratulations. Have a good presentation. Okay.
Thank
I
you.
send you my question in the email, perhaps. Okay. Thank
Wonderful.
you. Thank you, and God bless you. See you next.
Yes.
Peace.